Good morning, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for September the 13th, 2012. Take a look at the track of Tropical Storm Nadine here, going to curve harmlessly away from the United States due to the lack of high pressure sitting over the northern Atlantic to steer it west. That is simply not there this year, not anymore. It was earlier when we had Isaac that was able to sneak through and make landfall in Louisiana. This time the Azores Islands right here will be more in line of being impacted. Maybe, just maybe, it'll curve east enough to avoid the Azores, but then you've got the Canary Islands and maybe eventually even the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal. It's, happened before. Taking a look at a satellite picture, interesting to see all this dust in here north of the tropical storm. Once it can rid itself of that, I think it'll become a hurricane, and a fairly strong one. You can also see this front that has draped its way across the Atlantic basin here. Sometimes the tail ends of these fronts are the focusing mechanisms for development. I don't see anything in the global models that's too suspicious. Nevertheless, this little convergent zone down here, or surface trough, going to bring showers and thunderstorms off and on to parts of extreme South Florida through the Keys, so rather unsettled but not tropical in nature. The air on the other side of this front up here just too dry, as this drier fall-like air mass has come into place. As I mentioned, the steering pattern just not favorable at all to get anything to come all the way across and affect the United States. It's just not in the cards. When you see these upper level lows and troughs digging in all over the place, a very negative NAO pattern, basically you're just not looking at a strong Bermuda Azores high sitting out there. And I tell you what though, when it comes back, and it does so in cycles, we really need to look out. I don't know if it's going to be this year, I doubt it. Maybe it's next year. Never ever do the doom and gloom thing. I try to keep everything as straightforward as possible, but we know what can happen when you have a very strong ridge sitting out here, and these systems can move all the way across from Africa and hit the United States in succession. You think about 04 and 08, when there was so many systems headed for the United States. Rare that we have that pattern, thank goodness, but when it does come back, hopefully folks are ready, especially in Florida, where it has been 7 years since any hurricane, much less a major hurricane. The last one was Wilma in October of 2005. The MJO pattern, right now, kind of unfavorable in the Atlantic. That little white area right there is where Nadine is, so there's a little upward motion going on there. Over the next couple of weeks, it starts to shift towards a little bit more favorability settling in by the end of the month, and that goes very well with climatology, where we have a shift in activity back towards the western basin, especially in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, we could still have development out here between Africa and the Lesser Antilles, but with the lack of a strong Bermuda Azores high sitting out here, as I've shown you, I don't think that anything's going to have a chance to get all the way across and impact the United States. I don't see it happening, and I don't see any change in the pattern to suggest that it will. So we're going to want to watch at the end of the month and into October this region through here, which is the natural evolution of the season, as the development pattern shifts back to that region once we get to the end of the month and into October. Out in the western Pacific, a very dangerous typhoon Sanba out there, really churning things up. You can see that incredible outflow jet right there. The air comes in and converges around the center, and through the deep upward motion and the strong updrafts, and then that air is thrown out clockwise into the atmosphere in this big outflow pattern. 200 millibar ridge sitting over this system. Probably a Category 5 if it was in the Atlantic. Typhoons and hurricanes are the same thing structurally. The water temperatures out there, very warm. This is the heat content for the western Pacific. Right now the typhoon located in this area is forecast to move northward towards the Korean Peninsula, where water temperatures start to lessen but are still warm enough to support a very strong typhoon. And the Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast track shows the track north-northwest, cutting by a lot of these islands out here. Very dangerous situation. Then hopefully weakening just before it makes landfall in Korea, several days from now, possibly as a Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. And any deviation to the right of this forecast track, of course, would bring it into Japan, and that could be a big problem. I tell you, if people surf out in the western Pacific along the coast of Japan like they do here in the United States, this is going to kick up some incredible waves. The one benefit, perhaps, but obviously with a typhoon of this magnitude, that's the only good thing you can say about it. And the fact that it is taking that heat out of the tropics is just unfortunate that people live in the way of these things when they come barreling through. So that's a look at the tropics for today, from the Atlantic all the way over to the western Pacific. And even in the East Pac, where we have Tropical Storm Christy, it's going to move away from Mexico. No problems at all with that system. And overall, things are pretty good for basically the peak time of the hurricane season. Again, I'm Mark Sutt with HurricaneTrack.com, my website. Glad to do these videos for you on Hurricane and Hurricane HD. I'll be back to do it again tomorrow.